Today's show for Carousel, the adage or phrase, "Hi Mom," really works today. And my guest here today for Carousel is someone that, in actuality, I never thought I would meet, let alone certainly have on as a guest. So the two posters that you see here are actually her mom. So I welcome to Carousel, Debbi Whiting. Hi, Debbi.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you for being here. And how are you?
Thank you so much. This is great.
You're welcome. Thank you. Debbi has a lineage of talent in her family. She has her granddad, who is Richard A. Whiting, who was a very well-known composer for the Great American Songbook.
Correct.
And also, as we see here on the two posters, this really is, hi Mom, this is her mom, who is Margaret Whiting, who is a very renowned singer. So I asked Debbi on to Carousel today because there's some music that has been unearthed by Debbi and her family of Margaret that has been not released. It's been recorded but hasn't been released. So that's the hub of what today's show is. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you.
So
and go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Thank you.
No, I just wanted to clarify that we have released 2 CDs of recordings, 50 tracks that Margaret did do under the London label. Okay. And it came out as 3 LPs. But they were never then re-released digitally.
I see.
And we were able to obtain these sound recordings with the help of a few wonderful people on my team, Jim Pearson, Kathy Brown, and Arnold Golan, who was the producer. Okay. And he actually was the owner of all these sound recordings.
I see.
So we got together and we said, why don't we release these and give Margaret's fans and some new fans a chance to hear Margaret in the prime of her life singing better than she's ever sung before.
Okay.
And that's what we did.
Gotcha.
And we have, on there several songs that were never published or never released.
Never released,
but for the most part, 3 LPs worth have been released in the 60s.
Okay. That's getting a little ahead of ourselves, so
okay.
We'll get back to that.
Okay.
So let's start off by, first of all, you're obviously your mother's daughter.
Yeah.
So your mom was Margaret Whiting.
Correct.
And your dad was, we were talking a little bit about this before we started the interview, your dad was?
Lou Bush.
Right.
But he also went under the name of Joe Fingers Carr. And Joe Fingers Carr was...
He was a pianist.
Yes. A pianist, arranger, conductor. In fact, he was hired to replace Johnny Mercer's A&R job. Johnny, yeah, exactly. Johnny all of a sudden got very popular, becoming an entertainer in his own right, and running around doing shows and, you know, still writing music. And he finally said, I can't be here every single day A&Ring, so I'm going to hire Lou Bush. So Lou Bush came in. And Lou Bush had this wonderful background because he was also a Southern boy. He's from Louisville, Kentucky. And Johnny and he knew they had the same ear. So Dad was really good at putting together songs with the artist.
Got it.
And did a very good job.
Okay.
And then one day, Paul Weston asked Lou to be a honky-tonk piano player on a Joe Stafford record. And all of a sudden, Joe Fingers Carr
then it went
came into a reality, and Lou did 18 albums. I mean, once you start, you can't stop. 18 albums of honky-tonk. Every song you can imagine.
Isn't that something? He
did honky-tonk, and he was phenomenal. I mean, he was very, very big. He was headliner for tons of shows, traveled all over Europe. And then he also had Lou Bush, which was, you know, as Mother would say, his legit music. Right. She didn't like the honky-tonk.
I see.
But he also, so he had 2 separate identities and 2 separate contracts.
And you were saying earlier that is the first, or your dad's the first person that ever actually had anything like that.
Yes, he was the very first person that had 2 separate deals.
For recording, under 2 different names.
Right. He had the big orchestra contract, Lou Bush, and he had the trio contract for the...
Joey Fingers.
Yeah, for Joe Fingers Carr.
Isn't that wild?
And it was very good for him.
Yeah, sure. Isn't that something?
Yep. He was a smart guy.
And it's so interesting how life is connected. I say that on the show every time we do it. Because Johnny Mercer, you had mentioned Johnny Mercer's name, but let's go back in the Wayback Machine when your mom was, what, 6 years old?
Right.
And because your dad was, at that point in time, a very prolific in his career as a composer.
Right, my grandfather.
Right.
It's okay.
I keep saying that, I'm
It's
sorry.
okay,
Your granddad,
it's okay,
right.
it's all right.
So your granddad's out there, he's doing his thing, he's writing up a storm, and he's out in Hollywood, and he's rubbing elbows with people like Johnny Mercer and all that. And so one day, I remember reading the story that Johnny was over your granddad's house, and your mom's there, 6 years old.
Right.
And so she comes downstairs in her nightgown, sings 2 songs for Johnny Mercer,
Right.
and then goes back upstairs and goes to bed. And that was her introduction to Johnny Mercer, which then went into when Johnny Mercer started Capitol Records with,
Correct.
with another gentleman. And then, you know, when your mom got into her teenage years, he took, as you phrased it earlier, took her, meaning your mom, Margaret, under his wing, and then actually started her recording with Capitol Records.
Yep.
Isn't that something?
He used to come over and play new songs he had just written, hot off the press, as we used to say. And she would be the one that would be the first person to sing them. I think my grandmother told me that my mother knew about 350 songs when she was about 6 years old.
Wow, that's
because
something.
everyone would come over. I mean,
Right.
there would always be parties at my mom's house, my
Sure.
grandmother's house. So
Sure.
you'd have Uncle Jerry, Jerome Kern, and Uncle Harry Warren, and Harold Arlen, and all these wonderful writers
Sure.
coming over. And Richard was very good friends with George Gershwin, and just tons of people.
Sure.
And so Margaret was always there to say, hey, kid, and that's what he used to call her, kid. Hey, kid, sing this song.
Sure.
And she'd get right up there and learn it. She had great ear.
Great ears.
Play it once, she had
She
it
knew
down.
She knew it. And the cute story, too, as well, is when your granddad used to come home from the day working, writing, composing, and your mom being a little tyke at that point.
Yep.
And she would come in and she'd say, hey, you know, play me. I want to hear what you're
Yeah,
writing today.
how was your day?
Right.
What did you write?
What did you write? I want to hear it. Yeah, I want to
right.
play. Yeah, isn't that sweet?
Yeah,
That's really lovely.
it's wonderful.
Yeah,
She
it's really
loved
lovely.
her father so much.
Right.
And it was very sad that unfortunately he died so young, and she was so young. She didn't have enough time with him. But lucky for us in our family,
Sure.
we had the music.
Right.
And we are so lucky to have that as a memory.
Sure. Well, for anyone in this life, it's as if you're passing off a baton. And what your dad and your mom or your grandmother gave your mom, because through all your dad's obviously musical gifts, he passed it on to your mom.
Yep.
And then she took the baton and ran with it because of her wonderful career and the people that she worked with, and which goes on and on and on and on, and all the recordings that she did and all the performances that she did, and which is just
She was
off
an
the-
exceptional woman, because I personally feel, and I know it's going to sound kind of one-sided because I'm her daughter, but I really have gotten to know my mother more now than I did when she was
Yeah.
alive, because she was always traveling. She wasn't around that much.
Sure.
And you know, it's known within my friends and everything that we did not have the mommy and me relationship.
right.
But I have gotten to know her so much better, and
Sure.
her accomplishments. We are finding such wonderful things that she did,
Sure.
that she just, once she did them, she was on to the next thing.
Right.
She was always on to the future. She'd never sit down and go, come on, sit on my knee and let me tell you about what happened in 1948.
Right.
It never happened.
Yeah.
She was
She
thinking
kept
about
on
what
going.
was going to,
Kept
exactly.
on going. Yeah.
So now, Kathy Brown, my associate, my team member at My Ideal Music, which is my new company, she is so good at this, and she calls me up every day going, you won't believe what I found. A film of your mother doing the hula. I mean, every day she's got something unusual that she's found Margaret doing, and it's just broadening this archive.
And you didn't even know about, because of, as you phrased it, she was like the ever-ready rabbit. She just kept going and
Exactly,
going and going.
she didn't believe in keeping things. She didn't have a room filled with tapes and cassettes and everything. She just went on to the next person. I mean, she loved her LPs. She kept those.
Right.
But it was just on to the new. She wanted to hear the new.
And something that was sweet that we talked about earlier, before we started rolling this interview, that you had mentioned is your mom loved to listen to all different kinds of music.
Well, her father taught her that.
Yeah.
He said, to be well-rounded in this business, you must appreciate all forms of music.
Sure.
So she did, and then she taught me. And she taught me just by playing it.
Sure.
So I listened to all different types of music.
Sure. Isn't
And
that something?
it's wonderful.
Yeah,
It
it is.
also is not boring.
No,
Because
absolutely not.
depending on your mood, like
Sure.
driving up here today,
Right.
I had a little rock and roll on.
Right.
So,
Right.
and going home tonight, I'm going to listen to big band.
There you go.
So it's whatever.
And don't forget Doyle and Debbi.
I love Doyle and Debbi. That was my Tennessee year.
She just introduced me, meaning Debbi just introduced me to Doyle and Debbi, and I almost fell out of the car laughing.
They're great.
Yeah, it was terrific.
Great.
Yeah, it was, so thank you for introducing me to Doyle and Debbi. Yes.
Anytime.
Yes, that was terrific.
Okay.
Now, there's a website for your mom.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. It's www.margaretwhiting.com.
Right.
And it has pictures and songs and interviews, and it has a news page for all the interviews and things that we've been doing.
Sure.
It has where you can get the 2 new CDs and other CDs of hers.
Sure.
Anything that's coming up, any articles that have been written, wonderful clips. It's constant and it's always being updated. And her Facebook page, she's under Miss Margaret Whiting.
I see.
Under Facebook.
Got it.
And every day we're adding either a new vocal of hers, a story, or a picture of her with another celebrity, a little story.
And she just, meaning your mom, because you are out there, California.
Out in California.
She just had an honor.
Oh boy.
3 weeks ago,
oh
not
my
even, April
goodness.
17th or something.
The Paley Center.
Paley Center out in California.
Out in LA.
For media.
Paley Center for Media.
Right.
Did a tribute for her. It was the first of this season's showcases, and it was for the Great American Songbook, and the tribute was, it might as well be spring, a tribute for Margaret Whiting. It was sold out. It was amazing. We had a panel of 6 people, plus Michael Kirker as our moderator. We had Rose Marie and Peter Marshall, Amanda McBroom, and an old friend of the family, Alan Oppenheimer, who is, you would hear him because he does great voiceovers,
I see.
and you'd recognize him as a character actor.
I see.
It's one of those people that you go, oh yeah, I know who you are.
know who it is, right?
And just told wonderful stories about Mom, and we had the greatest film that they put together to present this wonderful tribute to my
To
mom.
your mom. As the performer.
Oh,
Yeah.
just fabulous.
And part of your mom's, let's say, duties, part of your mom's responsibility that she took upon herself was she also was president, if I understand it correct, of the Johnny Mercer Foundation, right?
Correct.
Because of her, obviously, her connection with Johnny Mercer,
Yes, Ginger,
personally.
Ginger requested that once she passed on, that she wanted Margaret to oversee everything. And Mom remained president until the day she passed away.
Wow.
And it was very important. Johnny Mercer and his life and his legacy was probably as important as her father's.
Right, Richard Whiting.
Or herself.
Yeah.
She really worked hard to promote him and keep his music out there.
Right.
Which isn't hard because it's out there on its own.
Yeah, it's definitely out there.
But
and
she was very, very strong about loving Johnny and keeping his music alive.
And he also helped in that sense of keeping it out there because of part of what Johnny Mercer was.
Right.
Part of the underneath of what we know Johnny Mercer.
Johnny was just a wonderful, great, warm man.
Yeah.
And if you see the videos of Margaret and Johnny together, you just see such a love. Possibly substitute dad, I don't know, but it's really a raw, true love.
Right.
You know, no baloney at all.
I'm sure a big part of that, not knowing either Johnny or certainly your mom, I'm sure a big part of that, I saw that one video that they did was black and white, of Baby It's Cold Outside.
Yes.
When they did the duet together.
Yes.
My guess would be that because of the fact that he took your mom, Margaret, under his wing at an age when your granddad had passed. So, as you say, it could have been a substantive dad. It could be purely just a mentor relationship because of the fact that he really did take her.
Well, he did, and he told her,
which is very sweet.
Said, grow up and study.
Sure.
But grow up.
Right.
That's what you have to do.
Yeah, which she did.
She sure did, because she's, I mean, I know this is going to sound silly coming from me, but I think she's the greatest American songstress we've ever had.
Sure. Now, the next turn of this is, you gave me a couple of CDs, and I want to mention this now so I don't forget at the end of the interview, is each time we do an interview for Carousel, I put on different kinds of music. The theme is always the same, the opening theme, but the ending is always something different where we roll the credits. So what I'm going to ask we do at the end of this particular interview is, you gave me a couple of your mom's CDs, so I'm going to take one of the songs and I'll put it as the show rolls out, and then because you gave me the 2 CDs, that there'll be other shows subsequently after that that'll do the same thing, and it'll be a different tune each time to put the music out there and also keep your mom's memory alive, and also the fact that you're now taking up the baton and running with it and helping to keep your mom's music alive, I guess, if you will. But also there's some fresh new material that you're going to be putting out there, which is really the crux of why we're here today and the crux of why we came together.
Yep, absolutely. We are finding, well, actually I have to give the credit to Kathy. She is unbelievable what she finds, and she is coming up with some amazing things Margaret did. And I don't even think Margaret would have remembered, but maybe she didn't want to. But we are finding some wonderful things, and we are going to eventually be able to share with her fans.
Sure.
And new fans and her old fan base. And we think it's great. We're going to keep Margaret alive.
Now, your mom, do you know if your mom was named for her aunt Margaret, who's an actress, Margaret Young, who's an actress as well?
Yes.
Was that where the name came from for your mom?
Yes, she was named after Eleanor's favorite sister, Margaret Young.
Margaret Young. And
Margaret Young and I have a wonderful relationship. I do remember my great aunt Margaret. I used to call her Boo Boo.
Boo Boo.
Boo Boo. And we used to walk around the house together going boo, 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 boo. Anyway, Aunt Mag was a very important part to Richard and to Eleanor, my grandmother. So.
And as well as your other aunt,
Barbara. Oh.
Barbara, here's another one. She had
fabulous.
She had a terrific career as an actress as well.
Unbelievable. It was the funniest, just high-spirited. If you see any of those Whiting Girl shows.
Right, those Whiting Girls,
yes,
right, which was back in the 50s.
And we're trying to get those re-released because they are so funny. And the people that are seeing them, there's nothing dated about them. Right. I mean, funny is funny.
Right.
And she is amazing. And she was an amazing aunt. And she was there for me when Mom was always on the road.
I see.
So I ran to her as a mom figure.
And her husband had some, was he the president or something of General Motors?
He was vice president in charge of advertising. That was one of the things. He was a multitasker.
Was it for General Motors?
Mm-hmm.
For General Motors, yes.
And
he had a big job, huge job.
Big job, and they lived in a beautiful house in Michigan, right. Bloomfield Hills or Birmingham, had changed names. And they had one son, Richard, and Richard now has a daughter, so they're continuing the legacy. She was great. I loved her.
I was thinking that today about if that's how your mom got her name. It just seemed the natural segue.
Yeah, I think Eleanor loved Margaret so much that she wanted to carry on the name.
Sure, that's beautiful. As they would say, that's a beautiful
Well, my
thing.
cousin's name is Richard Whiting Smith, so
there you go.
There you go.
Grandpa.
Yep.
Yeah, Grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandpa, meaning your granddad, I mean, look at what he wrote. Hooray for Hollywood. I mean, so much music.
And such a short
in such a short span of time. There's a tune I mentioned to you off camera. There's a tune that's on my 5th CD that it's I Can't Escape From You. And this is way before I met you. That is Leo Robin and your grandpa.
Uncle Leo.
Yeah, Uncle Leo.
Uncle Leo. Let's get it straight.
That's pretty wild.
Otherwise, I wouldn't recognize the name.
Yeah, but it's
Uncle Leo.
It was a great tune.
Yes,
yeah, it's a great
absolutely.
tune.
Well,
yeah.
Leo was such a talent.
Sure.
And he and Richard got along so well. They were both shipped out from the East Coast to work movies. Yeah,
right.
Paramount.
Your granddad, he moved out to, if I understand it right, they moved out, meaning with your mom and your grandmother, moved out to Hollywood around 1929. Somewhere around that ballpark?
Yeah, could be.
That must have been pretty hard because that's just prefacing the crash.
Well,
the stock market crash.
But you have to remember, we're in show business. We couldn't get arrested. Right. My father said, I said, oh, Dad, how was the depression and the crash and all that? He said, are you kidding? I was working every night. He said people were so depressed they came to hear music. Yeah. So that's what happened.
I see.
And that's what Richard did. I mean, yeah, you felt it somehow, but that whole movie business was really kind of detached.
Well, it was also the Great American Songbook, and also the movies were right on the precipice of it going, it skyrocketed. Because that was when all the movies started coming out, the late 20s, 30s, and then 40s.
The couple nickels they had, they wanted to go and escape
from it.
So they went and watched a movie and listened, and now that it has sound in it, it's even better.
Sure.
So.
But that's all of what that was based upon, meaning the Great American Songbook. I mean, it's the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on. And your grandfather was he was on the hub of that. Right. He was on the precipice of it. And then, of course, your mom, carrying the baton, she was leading the charge.
That's right.
You know, out with folks like Judy Garland and you name it.
All of them.
You're talking Joe Stafford.
Yep, Mel Torme. Just to drop a few names.
Right, but all these folks, they were doing it then.
Yeah.
They were actually out working, performing, and living it. You were telling me, again before camera roll, about how your mom ended up hanging out with Frank Sinatra for a while.
Well, she was dating Jimmy Van Heusen.
Jimmy Van Heusen, another composer,
yes. And, you know, he was kind of a wild guy and hanging out with Frank Sinatra, and Sinatra would come by Eleanor's house on Friday night and honk the horn. Hey, Maggie! And was that a good imitation? And she'd come out and he'd go, come on, Maggie, get your bags. We're going to the Springs. It's Martuni time. So she'd go. And, you know, they'd all carry on. Just craziness.
Yeah, crazy.
Playing music. And, I mean, could you imagine that? With Frank Sinatra and Jimmy Van Heusen and all that music?
No.
I'm good friends with the Van Heusen family.
Are you?
Babcocks.
Okay.
So I tell him, if he keeps bothering me, I will bring up Margaret and Jimmy dating, and that'll shut him up right away.
That'll be the end of that, right?
Exactly. He goes, zip. But they're having a wonderful year because they've got the centennial this year. Sammy Cahn and Van Heusen were both born what year is this? 1913.
I see.
So they have the 100.
Yeah. So it's 2013 coming.
Yep. So they're having tons of all sorts of shows going on.
Sure. Sure. Have you, although Mom wasn't, meaning your mom, wasn't more of an actress as opposed to a performer and singer, have you had any connection with Turner Classic Movies, for example, or Robert Osborne? Because a lot of what their movie music, if you will, is all about this time that we're talking about.
Well, it just so happens that Sandy, my intern, who handles all of Richard Whiting's music for my company, said that Osborne just did a huge salute to Richard Whiting.
See?
They did several movies, and he spoke, instead of just saying, well, the next movie is, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
He spoke about Richard and told stories about Richard.
Interesting.
And that I had actually written Mr. Osborne a letter and said, we have so many movies in our catalog.
Sure.
you should do a tribute. So he said he would present it to his people, and obviously it worked.
Good for you.
Because they did it.
Good for you.
Yeah, we were very happy.
Good for you. And certainly, there's another movie channel I just realized now that's come out. It's called This, THIS.com. Well, it's not .com, but it's This. And they're not replicating Turner Classic Movies, but they're showing a lot of the older movies, like the 40s and 50s and all that. I just recently saw it on cable. But there's no question that there is that big fan base out there. And it's not just people who grew up then who are certainly getting the older. I mean, the new kids are getting on the bandwagon.
Sandy is 16 years old. He knows more about these old movies than I could even imagine. And he said to me, it's the new youth.
Sure.
One day when I asked him, I almost punched him out. it's the new way. But these young kids, they know all these songs.
I know. I perform in New York City every Friday and Saturday night. I was doing a gig last Friday night, and I pulled out Count Your Blessings, which is Irving Berlin.
Right.
Because it's such a beautiful, simplistic song. It's gorgeous. And I'm singing it, and there's this person that's probably 20 years my junior, girl, sitting in close to me, and she's mouthing the words. And my brain's going, how the heck does she know that song? Because it's 1939 Irving Berlin. But it's what you say. And of course, why is that music, why does it keep going? Why does it keep finding itself? Why does it keep finding an audience? Because it has substance. It's not only the Great American Songbook, yes, no question, but it has substance. It makes sense. It's got a great melody line. The lyrics work. It's a marriage of composers. It's a marriage of music. It was a marriage of performers, musicians. That's why it all worked. And that's why it keeps going. That's why it's sustaining. And I really believe, beyond the fact that I perform a lot of this music, that's why I believe it's just going to keep on going.
Well,
because of that fact.
I don't want to knock anybody currently writing and singing right now, but I think that there is kind of a lack of some good stuff out there. So people will enjoy a few things, but then they'll turn around and want to hear something with substance.
Sure. We're coming down to the end of the show, and as I said to you, 28 minutes is going to go by like that.
Really fast.
Debbi, thank you for being on here.
Thank you so much. This has been a real treat for me.
Well, that was a real treat for me. We're going to have you back because there were some more stories that I wanted to cover. Obviously, we weren't going to have the time. So margaretwhiting.com, you can find information about what's going on with Margaret Whiting and what Debbi's efforts are with the new music that's going to be coming out.
And that'll also lead you to her Facebook page.
Right, and as Margaret, would you say it was Miss Margaret Whiting on Facebook?
Or you can go on the website and you can go right into it. Right.
So thank you so much for being here, Debbi. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for joining us on Carousel. Please come back again.
You reappearing in my mind. You were right, and I was blind, but that was long ago. Now, do I ever cross your mind?